Hello everyone, welcome back to the Tent of Abraham. I'm Tamir Kreisman from Jerusalem, Israel, and this is the end of the Erev Rav. The Lord laughs at him because he saw that his day will come. Now, I know I said I was going to try and conclude everything this week, but there's too much material, so next week. But anyway, it's getting good. So let's get right into it. Last week's class, we went through the 5 groups of the Erev Rav, who are weaved into the Jewish people, posing as Jews, be it Orthodox or secular, doesn't matter, right? But they're anything but, obviously. So these 5 groups are Amalek, Nephilim, Giborim, Rephaim, and Anakim. A quick recap of what each group is, but if you missed last week's teaching, please, you need last week's teaching for this week's teaching, okay? The Amalekites. The Amalekites have been given permission to rob the less fortunate ones from Israel in exile, and they are from the remnants of the time of the flood, who then reincarnated while Israel were in Egypt. They are also affiliated with the 4th exile. Okay, Nephilim. These are the side of prostitution. Giborim. Again, the whole explanation is in last week's class. The Giborim are men of renown, as written in Genesis 6:4. And everything they do is to make a name for themselves. They are affiliated with the generation of the Tower of Babel. Rephaim, these are the ones who can but do not show mercy, gives charity, does acts of kindness, who does not give charity or does acts of kindness towards Torah scholars. And Anakim, they make fun of Torah scholars. It's like detesting them. So the one thing that all these groups have in common is that they all look like Jews, okay? I mean, not necessarily Orthodox Jews, but they're all born Jews in one way or another. But their soul is Erev Rav. So it doesn't matter. You could have 2 Jewish parents and legit be a born Jew, and you could have the soul of Erev Rav. But again, it just means that you're not part of Israel. And again, this is, it's apparent by their deeds. This is how you could sort of sniff them out. So now we're going to see where they are all placed. If we look at the end of Masechet Sotah, the end of chapter 9 and the Mishnah, and we'll see where they all stand. Now, we've gone through this Mishnah plenty of times, but now we're going to place them right into here. So in other words, while we are going through these troubles in times of the approach of Messiah, we'll see exactly where all these groups play a part. Be'kvot meshicha chutzpah yisageh. In the times of the approach of Messiah, impudence will increase and high costs will pile up. As the Gra brings forth from Masechet Chagiga 14a, these are the brazen ones in every generation who seek to crown themselves and to be the heads of the people. What people? Heads of Israel. Anyone that's looking for leadership in Israel, this is what our sages say. This is what the Vilna Gaon says next. Ve'yoker ya'amir hagefen titen pirya ve'yayin be'yoker. Although the vine shall bring forth its fruit, and it does in abundance, wine will nevertheless be expensive. Why? Rashi says these are all those who chase after the lusts of this world. Ve'hamalchut tehafech leminut ve'en tochecha. And the monarchy shall turn to heresy, and there will be no one to give reproof about this, right? As we said, and then directly the verse from Isaiah, anyone who goes against evil, sees what's going on, goes against the way of the world, will be deemed insane by the people, by the mainstream. So this specifically refers to the kingdom of Edom, according to the Gra in the Book of Formation. And when all the world will become corrupt and run by Edom, then Mashiach will come. In other words, the way we're looking right now, look who runs the world, look who governs the world. Don't look at flags and maps. Look who actually controls every single thing that happens and all the narratives that are in there. It's not just a country, okay? But then look at the centralized location. Nevertheless, they're all going down. They have to, because only once the world gets completely filled with this. In other words, like, again, we're going back to the topic of America, because I know most of you guys are from the States. America has to be completely overrun. You can't win this fight, is what I'm saying. I know there's so many good people out there and you're trying to fight for the country, for the red, white, and blue, and the soldiers that died for it and all this stuff. Yes, many people gave their lives and it was a beacon of hope and freedom. But that was never the underlying reason why it was established. Do you know that one of the languages, there are actually 3 languages that they were considering speaking in America: English, French, and Hebrew. That's right. I told you, the founders of the country were Freemasons. They know Torah very, very well. It is the holy language. They learn in Hebrew. They speak in Hebrew. The incantations are in Hebrew, for goodness sakes. They knew that back then. Y'all don't know this today, though. Again, great place. Rotten core has to come down. That's why I'm sorry. You're not winning this fight. You don't want to win this fight. Because if you do, which you can't, but if you would, then Mashiach wouldn't come. You want Messiah? You want this world to be proper? Let's do this. Okay? It's going to tear itself down. Just get out of the way. This is also the concept, the Gra continues, this is also the concept of the pig. Here we go. There are 2 signs that makes an animal kosher to eat, right? Split hooves and chews its cud. Why is the pig the most detested of all animals? Is he less kosher than, let's say, shrimp or camels or snakes or whatnot? No. When it comes to a matter of kosher, it's black or white. It's either kosher or not kosher. Same thing. You are either a Jew or you're not a Jew. Not according to whatever conservative or reformed synagogue. I've heard people say, but I thought I was a Jew in the name of Jesus to me in the past. Who teaches people these things? Anyway, you're either a Jew or you're not a Jew. Kosher or non-kosher. This is mamash, yes, no, according to the laws of the Torah. So, what's the deal with the pig? The pig has split hooves, which he shows to the world, right? As in, look at me, I'm kosher, I'm good, I'm righteous. Everything I do is for your benefit, and so on. But not only is he a liar, but he's a deceiver as well, because he don't chew his cud. He's just got these. And when he lays down, look, I'm kosher. No, you ain't. Once the kingdom of Edom will be exposed for all to see, then, in other words, this is what's going to happen. The kingdom of Edom is likened to a pig. Now, in Bereshit Rabbah 65a, it says, and Esav was 40 years old, right? Genesis 26:34. Now, in Psalms 80, verse 14, it says, the boar from the forest gnaw at it, and chazir is, right? So in Hebrew, it says, yechasmena chazir miya'ar. So the boar, the pig, and the creeping things of the field graze on it. Rabbi Pinchas said, in the name of Rabbi Simon, only 2 prophets spoke of this matter, of the pig, right? And they were who? Moses and Asaph from Psalms, Mizmor Asaph. Moses said in Deuteronomy 14:8, and the pig, because it has a split hoof but does not chew its cud, it is unclean for you. You shall neither eat of their flesh nor touch their carcass. So if you have the system that governs the world currently likened to a pig, stay away from that system. You first have to recognize that system. Stay away. Not only should you not eat it, don't touch their carcass. And as far as we are concerned, they're the walking dead. Stay away. This is a protection for you. For who? For Israel. Who are you? And Asaph said in Psalms 80:14, which we just read, so why do they bring forth the pig? Because when the pig lies down, as we said, in the mud, in its own filth, it stretches out its hoof saying, I am pure. So too is the final kingdom of Edom likened to a pig. Saying to the world, look, I am good. This is for you. But in all actuality, they are liars, they are robbers, they are deceivers, and they know exactly what they're doing. So too was Esav. He was no dummy. He knew his stuff. Up until he was 40 years old, he would hunt the wives of men and torture them. But when he turned 40, he wanted to liken himself to his father, right? Isaac, big tzaddik. He said, my father married when he was 40, which he did, right? The binding of Isaac was 30. He was 37 years old. 3 years later, he married Rivka. My father married when he was 40. So too shall I marry when I'm 40. Look, I'm doing what my dad did while I'm living my life. It don't make you a tzaddik or pure by any means. That's why it was written, and Esav was 40 years old, specifically to mention that. See, this is his thought process. That's in Genesis 26:34. People still don't understand who Edom is because no one wants to believe that it's them. Who takes our Torah and pretends to live by it in the most superficial ways, of course, while underneath it's all a lie. Look at the posers, look at the fakers who call themselves Israel but are not, right? Now, this ranges anywhere from the Roman Catholic Church all the way through the Messianics, even to the Reform and the conservative movements. There is no substance. It's all superficial. It's a hobby. It's a convenience. It's not an actual way of life, because if it was an actual way of life, they would actually be following halacha and not doing things openly and teaching their congregants against it. So I'm just, again, look where this comes from. Don't forget, where'd you get your books from, right? The same place that you yourself call idolatry. Don't worry, we're going to cover that one too. But the whole thing is basically make-believe, because if you actually get into a one-on-one and you know your stuff, again, just open up page by page and there's so many holes. It's already down. Anyway, scratch the surface a little bit, all right? You'll see. There's actually no substance there. There's no substance. Everything is, yeah, hallelujah, I feel, and the Holy Spirit. But there is no substance by which to live by, and that's why they can easily be swayed. And I told you, like I said, God willing, we will be discussing this in 2 weeks. Beit Vad yeh liznut, the meeting place of the sages, will become a place of promiscuity. Who were the first to chase after the daughters of men? The Nephilim. Here we go. Now, znut comes from the word zonah, prostitute. Ve'anshe hagvul yesovevu me'ir le'ir ve'lo yechonanu. And the men of the border shall go around from city to city to seek charity, but they will find no mercy. In Tikkunei Zohar 21, it says, it will be in the last exile like it was in the beginning, when every male child was ordered to be thrown into the Nile. No compassion whatsoever. God pays back to the nations exactly what they do to his children. Exactly, measure for measure. V'chochmat sofrim tisrach v'yirei chet ima'asu, and the wisdom of the scribes will putrefy. Tisrach, will putrefy. And people who fear sin will be held in disgust. Oh, you fear sin? You follow the Torah? You love God? Get out of here. Show me your pass. You cannot enter. And the truth will be absent. No truth. Right? Okay, we're on schedule. Fantastic. These are the Anakim who ridicule and humiliate the Torah scholars. But also within this category are the Rephaim who want nothing to do with the Torah. Na'arim pnei zkenim yalbinu, zkenim ya'amdu mipnei ktanim. The youth will shame the face of the elders, and the elders will stand before the minors. In regard to the standing, right, why do they stand ya'amdu? It says in Sanhedrin 7b, anyone who erects a crooked judge, it's as if he erects an Asherah, right? An Asherah tree. There's your Christmas tree, by the way. Again, so you have other gods and other deities and whatnot, and you erect a crooked judge. One of the 7 Noahide laws is to establish courts of law for yourselves with obviously righteous judges, whether you're a Jew or not. This is what the entire world is based on. No. So the whole system has to come down because there is no justice. We see this. If you got money, you'll get off. No problem. If you're poor and innocent or there's a political agenda, you're done. Because the brazenness has grown to such levels, indeed it has. The only reason the elders who stand before the youths it's because they have accepted that this is how it is right now. This is how it is. In other words, it's never going back to what it was. It's never going to get better. It's only going to get worse until it completely explodes. But then Mashiach comes. So all this has to take place, and we are in the process. It's not we see, okay, step 1 is done, step 2 is done. No, all these steps are happening simultaneously. It's like you're slowly but surely turning up the volume, turning up the heat. The Gra continues to show us how the 5 groups of the Erev Rav will emerge from within 4 sects during the time of redemption, of whom it is said in Isaiah 44:5, this one shall say, I am the Lord's, and this one shall call himself by the name of Jacob, and this one shall write with his hand to the Lord and adopt the name Israel. Now I have to read this in Hebrew, because there are 4 groups here. So again, there are 4 groups of Israel, especially now in the last days. These 5 groups of Erev Rav, like we said, have to emerge out of. Okay? How are they going to come out of these 4 groups? So we're going to see now who the 4 groups of Israel are. And you'll also understand by that how the 5 groups of the Erev Rav are going to be separated from them. At least most of them. The rest is going to happen only when Mashiach comes. Like we said, he's going to smell the fear of God on every man, no matter how big rabbinical they are or lowly or secular they are. It doesn't matter. He'll go to the biggest rabbi in Israel and be like, you don't belong here. And I'll go to a guy that can't even read or write and be like, come here, you're in this or that tribe, and so on and so forth, because we don't know what tribe we're in. Okay, so, Ze yomar la Hashem ani, that's 1. V'ze yikareh b'shem Yaakov, v'ze yichtov yado la Hashem, u'b'shem Israel yikaneh. All right, so the last one is and adopt the name Israel, but rather he will be referred to as Israel in the name of Israel. So these are the 4 groups, okay, of Jews, of Israel. So because again, all of Israel today are Jews. That's really the bottom line. So I'm not talking about the people who have yet to convert. If you convert, yes, you are, guess what? You are absolutely part of Israel. But until then, you're not. You know this. Halacha, Torah. Okay, no argument. Just come. So let's break them down. From Aderet Eliyahu, this is the Graz commentary on Torah, specifically from Deuteronomy 33:5. Where it says, and he was a king in Yeshurun whenever the sum total of people were gathered and the tribes of Israel were together. Vayhi b'Yeshurun melech behit asef rashei am yachad shivtei Israel. These are the 4 groups of people that we can find within the 4 kinds. What are the 4 kinds? Arbat aminim. That we gather together and shake in 6 directions during the time of Sukkot. The 4 minim, the 4 kinds are etrog, citron. It's like a big fat lemon. Its characteristics are taste and smell. Then we have the arava, the willow, that has taste but no smell. Then we have the hadas, the myrtle. It has smell but no taste. And then we have the lulav, the palm leaf that has to, not the open palm leaf, it has to be, shut and then wrapped around, that has no taste and no smell. Okay, so these are the Arbat Aminim, and these culminate all of Israel. All right, and all of these must be wrapped up within each other in order to get this to work. Right, we are them, they are us. The way it's done is that the palm, willow, and myrtle, the lulav, arava, and hadas, are all tied together. And then we join the etrog, the citron, with them in order to say the blessing, right? That's the only thing that is actually separate. And we go in the sukkah, we say the blessing in the 6 directions, all right? This is a spiritual antenna in its properties, which is why we shake it 3 times in the 4 directions, north, south, east, and west, and then up and down. So not in that order, but we're not getting into it right now. So it's like a 3D Magen David, if you think, a Star of David, also known as the Merkava, the chariot. Okay, so the 4 groups within Israel, taste and smell. Who are the guys with the taste and smell? Torah scholars along with the mitzvot, right? You study Torah and mitzvot, that's taste and smell. Taste, no smell. Learning Torah, not doing mitzvot. Smell, no taste, you're doing mitzvot without learning Torah. No taste, no smell, no Torah, no mitzvahs. You get it. Okay, so we're going to look at Isaiah 44 again. Ze yomar la Hashem ani. This one shall say, I am the Lord's. Who is the Lord's? Torah scholars along with mitzvot. The second group, V'ze yikareh b'shem Yaakov, and this one shall call himself by the name Jacob. Torah without mitzvot, because this one learns Torah because of his name, but does not live according to it. It could be an Orthodox person who grows up in a completely Orthodox home or Haredi home, ultra-Orthodox, and he's learning Torah. And the only reason he's learning is because his dad said that he's got to do it, but he's got no connection. Therefore, everything he does, it has no substance. You see, it's not just enough to study. It's not just enough to do. You need both. But anyway, we're getting there. The third, V'zei katev yado la'Hashem, and this one shall write with his hand to the Lord. This is mitzvot without learning the Torah. Ubeshem Israel ikaneh. Now, who are these? And adopt the name of Israel. No Torah and no mitzvot. So how could they be called Israel? They can, because they are, but we'll get that too. So this last one is very interesting. And it's very common of what we see today in various wannabe groups, right? They call themselves Israel, and yet they follow false doctrines and refuse to recognize the only true words of God, calling it the Old Testament. And yet still, there are even those from within this group who are the lost sparks that must come out. That's why. And guess what? You know as well as I do, it's happening. And now, all these four groups are joined together in order to bring about the redemption. You need everybody to bring about the redemption. But there is one condition. As written in Masechet Megillah 13a, anyone who rejects avodah zarah, meaning idolatry, foreign or deviant worship, is called a Jew, nikra Yehudi. Now, just remember during the days of Esther and Mordechai, it says that many were Judaized because of the fear that they had of the Jews at that time. But in our time, okay, I've had many conversations with many of you, and also many who no longer watch my channel. You cannot hold on to idolatry and deviant worship and expect to be part of Israel. That does not work. And we're going to see this over the next couple of weeks, and especially over the next month. You're going to change your perspective. You know my number, or you don't know my number, but you got my email. Anyway, you know how to reach me. I do not set these commands, but I stand firmly by them. You can't do them both. So remember now, from within these four groups, there are those who are truly Israel, and they will be elevated. And the rest, listen to me now, the rest are Erev Rav posing as Israel on levels of the spectrum over there. Now the Gra writes in Tikkunei Zohar, Zohar Chadash 27b, and Jacob, since he saw the trouble of the exile at the end of days, it was said in Genesis 32:8, Jacob became very frightened and he was distressed. So what did he do? It says, so he divided the people who were with him and the flocks and the cattle and the camels into two camps, right? That's what he did. He divided the people from the animals into two groups. And then he divided the people themselves into groups. And then he divided the holy nation into three groups of peoples, as written in Genesis 33:2. And he placed the maidservants and their children first, and Leah and her children after, and Rachel and Joseph last. So you got three groups. Now, what is the Gra saying? What are the end of days? The birth pangs of Mashiach, of course. Jacob became very frightened and was distressed because his brother Esav, Edom, Rome, the system of the world, has the power to destroy only during the exile, which we are currently in. What are the three camps? The first one is the Erev Rav among them. The second, the good aspect of Am Haaretz, usually the lowest of the people. Am is, well, okay, I'll explain this in a minute. Am Haaretz is the lowest of the people of Israel. The guys that don't read, don't write, no Torah, no Mitzvot. Those are them. Don't care. Yeah, I'm a Jew, but I don't care. And three, the students of Torah, the Torah scholars, are as written in Re'eya Mehemana, the faithful shepherd, the people, my people, and Israel. Okay? The people, Erev Rav, my people, Amei Haaretz, even the lowest of the lowest, and Israel, because Israel is a high version of Jacob. It's the spiritual, in the spiritual realms, if you will. So the maidservants and their children first. These are the Erev Rav who are first. What does this mean? Meaning, at the head of the holy nation in exile. As written in Lamentations 1:5, her adversaries have become the head. Hayu tzarea lerosh. Just like we said, who runs Israel? Who has been running Israel? The Erev Rav. Again, another point of reference. Leah and her children after. These are the positive aspects of Am Haaretz. So those that really don't have anything to show for themselves, and yet they try. That's a positive aspect. And Rachel and Joseph last. These are the Talmidei Chachamim, the students of Torah, the Torah scholars. Because in exile, Israel are called Joseph, right? So we can see here that the nation of Israel has been divided now into three groups. The lowest of Israel are called Am Haaretz, literally translated to the people of the land or the people of the earth, like physically low. And just as a study tip, now here we go, pay attention, especially now that we're entering into the reading of Exodus, you will see God referring to Israel in three ways, okay? He'll call them Am, when he is displeased with them because they're acting like the earth, right, low. Then there's Kehillah, when he wants to gather them as one people. That means he's not especially pleased with them, but he's not especially displeased with them either. And then, but in order for the next step to come, which is Edah, you got to first gather the people. Then the third one is Edah, one nation of one mind and focus, which is why the root of this term, Ed, is witness. All right? So, Am, Keilah, Edah. This will give you a better perspective on the happenings beneath the service, and it's also a very good indication of what might come next. In other words, and the Am were doing this and this and that. You're like, oh, God's not pleased with them. Something bad's happening. Or call to Kol Edat Israel. Okay, here we go. They're about to be elevated. You'll see that in the study, right? Okay, so back to our deal. The lowest of Israel, Am Haaretz, God calls them Ami, my people, meaning the people who simply carry his name, which we discussed from Isaiah 44:5, and adopt the name Israel. Ubeshem Yisrael Yikaneh. Who are these within Israel? These are the ones who live just as the nations do, completely secular lifestyles. If you looked at them walking in the street today, there would be no mannerisms or externalities that would suggest that they are Jews. There's no humility in their dress, in their speech. It's just, that's unfortunately how it is. Tattoos, piercings, blue hair, I guess that's in right now. Barely any clothing. Tel Aviv, San Francisco, same thing, right? I mean, in fact, we have one of the biggest Israeli clothing companies is called, what do you call it? I forgot. It's come on. It'll come to me. Okay, anyway, it's like the gayest neighborhood in San Francisco. Castro, that's what it's called, right? The biggest clothing line in Israel is called Castro. And Tel Aviv, San Francisco, same thing, right? Yeah. Why do I gotta go? I got everything here right now. And yet, they are still called by the name of God. But here's the catch, okay? What separates these individuals from the Erev Rav who are Jews and do not act just as they do, right? Because within this group of complete secular people who live as the nations, what's the difference between the Erev Rav and Israel? These guys, despite their zero connection with the Torah or the Mitzvot, recognize that they are Israel, and they also recognize the Torah scholars. When I was living in the States, I met a bunch of people. Now, again, I speak English. I don't have an Israeli accent, but I can detect an Israeli accent. And so when Israelis speak to me and I say, where are you from? I've had people I'm from Egypt, I'm from here, I'm from there. And I start speaking to them in Hebrew. I'm like, Tamit Bayesh? Like, are you ashamed? You know, what? Yeah, they're ashamed. Okay, anyway. So what connection do these completely secular, off the derech people have with God? They know their creator. They know their history. They simply don't follow. It doesn't mean they turn their back, but they still show respect, okay? And yet, these are the same secular Jews who still come to synagogue during Tfilat Ne'ilah at Yom Kippur, right? It's the final prayer in Yom Kippur before you close the door. I remember even as a kid, all of a sudden, all the windows of the synagogue are filled, like everybody's just standing outside. Complete secular people are standing there just to get a glimpse, no kippot on their head, no nothing. They came there on a bicycle or whatever. It's a beautiful thing to see. We all open the window, we welcome them in, as many people as possible, because this is Israel. That's okay. Maybe your parents weren't Orthodox. Maybe they didn't know. Maybe their parents weren't. A lot of, again, I'm a third generation from Holocaust survivors. After the Holocaust, if you didn't go directly to God, like, thank you, God, for saving me, you were very angry at God. You're like, if there is a God, first of all, I don't believe if there was a God, he would allow this to happen. But if there is a God and he did this to his own people, I want nothing to do with him. So half the people from the Holocaust got out and they're like, yay. And now we get to live in Israel. And the other half were like, my whole family was just murdered and my city's burned and this and that. And I want nothing to do with this. So they raise their kids with that bitterness, right? So is it their kids' fault? Is it their grandkids' fault? No, it's not their fault. They're called tinok shenishba, where you're born into that. So again, only God really knows their true souls, because a lot of people, they do believe in God. I have some friends and they're like, don't talk to me about God or anything spiritual. I don't want to hear it. It's not good. I don't believe in God. I'm like, yes, you do. You're just really angry at God. Like, fine. Yes, I'm really angry at God. Okay, good. At least you're angry with him. Be angry with God. No problem. But that just shows recognition. That's very important. These people, despite how far they are, they're still Israel. Okay, so like I said, they come to synagogue during Ne'ilah. They might join a Torah class for a rabbi that visits their neighborhood. They're like, okay, secular guys, they got kippahs by the door. Come sit down. You'll see the rabbi speak, and you turn the camera around. You see who's sitting in the audience. I'm like, no one there is Orthodox, no one. But they all came to hear a rabbi speak Torah, Israel, or. Again, they go to their parents' house on Friday night for Kiddush, right? And a Shabbos meal. In fact, I know that most secular families do, even if the family itself claim they don't believe in God or any of this stuff, but it's a nice tradition. Okay, no problem. That is better than nothing. Still, they're getting mitzvot, they don't even know it. They will put on a yarmulke and they will sit there quietly. Why? Because when it counts, when it matters, and when they are broken, that's where their Jewish soul comes out to play. Again, that's why God breaks us down. We see it as a bad thing. I feel like nothing is right. I feel like I can't do anything. Why do you think that is? Don't worry, right? We have this thing in Israel called Pinui Binui. A lot of old buildings in Israel, because they were built in a rush, like 70 years ago. Tiny little stilts. We got a little earthquake, they just collapse. And we know the big one's coming and nothing's going to matter. Nevertheless, okay, Pinui, lefanot, to clear out the building, right? Okay, so now I'm homeless now. What am I going to do? But they made you homeless and paid for an apartment for you to live while they gut the whole building. They ripped the whole thing down. And now you're going to move back to a building with an apartment 2 times the size, with an underground parking, with an elevator, because, hey, not all of them had elevators. And it's a total upgrade. It's like, oh, yeah. So let God tear you down, because he's only going to build you up better. Okay, remember that. Now, there is nothing more beautiful seeing a lost brother come on their own, to seek God, because they never lost faith, as disgruntled as they are. And again, some of you guys who are strong with your faith, you get disgruntled. Go back. We've talked about this. Go back to your points. Go back to what you know. Now, on the other hand, not every one of these secular-looking individuals are Israel. Most, in fact, are the Erev Rav from this particular group. Now, the Erev Rav within this group separate themselves from any kind of Jewish markings or lifestyle or tradition, just as our brothers. But the difference is, right, they'll look the same, they'll act the same, but the difference is they don't believe in God. They have such venomous hatred towards any semblance of Yiddishkeit, of Judaism, of anything. It's disgusting. I've seen, when I went to high school, I got thrown out of 2 high schools, 2 religious high schools, actually. I didn't cause trouble. I just didn't like going to class. I don't like being told what to do. Anyway, I've told you guys this before. But anyway, the last high school I went to was completely secular. Completely secular. The kids in the class over there, they were throwing around, we had a Tanakh class, not based on what the commentaries say, what a leftist professor said. Oh no, I think that Elijah's punishment of the false prophets was too harsh. Seriously, I've actually read this in textbooks. It was too harsh. You shouldn't have done that, and God should have showed more mercy to the Egyptians after trying to slaughter his own people. So yeah, thank you for your opinion. I don't care. But this was the class. This is why the kids, they brought Tanakh to class, the whole Tanakh, and they would throw it at each other, throw it at each other's heads and rip out pages. It was hard to see. And oddly enough, after I went through 2 years in that school, that's when I went to yeshiva, black hat yeshiva here in Jerusalem. I'm like, if I ever have kids and they grow up like that, I'm going to kill myself and them. Maybe in that order. But that's just despicable to see Jewish children behave like this. But again, I got to say, they don't know any better because their parents and their parents, you see? So again, all right. So the Erev Rav of these groups, these are the ones who either privately or publicly wish the Orthodox dead. And some really do, especially after this whole Rona thing came out. They were blaming the Orthodox because the ultra-Orthodox, they live in their own ghettos by choice. Why? Because they don't want to mix with the rest of the world. So they, again, with the media and everything, oh yeah, all the Orthodox, they're all sick with the Rona and they're causing everybody else. I'm like, what are you talking about? They're staying there amongst themselves. We know that you can't trust anything that they say, and then numbers change and whatever. Anyway, you see left-wing nuts, let them stay in there. Don't give them assistance. If they call to go to the hospital and help them, let them all die, these bastards. Writing publicly, these people sound like Erev Rav to me. Okay. Again, you have entire newspapers dedicated to the eradication of God and the Torah from existence. For example, a newspaper called Haaretz. Have you guys heard of this? Since before the state of Israel had been established, they wanted nothing to do with God and his land, right? We are a newspaper of Palestine. You get it? Erev Rav. Okay. And again, they're still around today, writing articles and whatnot. Usually it's very, very sympathetic to our Arab brothers who all they want to do is live in peace and murder us. The Ramchal speaks of this well from his book 515 Prayers for the Ramchal. As we discussed in prayer number 371, he says, "And this is the book of life, of which it is said in Deuteronomy, but you who cleave to the Lord your God are alive, all of you, this day. Vatem hadvekim ba'Hashem Elohechem chayim kulchem hayom." To remove the Erev Rav, who are referred to in Proverbs 16:28 as V'nirgan mafrid aluf, and a grumbler alienates the Lord. Aluf, Aleph, it's God. Opposing these people are 2 books of the same wicked ones that do not want to receive the Torah from the scholars and hate them. And that is the book of the absolute wicked, to which it is said of them in Ezekiel 13:9, "And my hand shall be against the prophets who prophesy vanity, and the diviners of lies. In the council of my people they shall not be. Shall not be. They are now, but they shall not be. And in the roster of the house of Israel they shall not be inscribed. And to the land of Israel they shall not come. And you will know that I am the Lord." What were we saying last week already? Right now, the land is vomiting out all the posers, right? All those who are messianic and trying to whatever, who call themselves rabbi, who are not rabbis. The land is vomiting them out. They are being exposed left and right. Prophecy fulfilled, being fulfilled, more to come. But those of this group who submit to Torah scholars and do right by them, meaning true Torah scholars are God's rep in this world, and you have to recognize that. You mess with them, you mess with God. Be nice to everybody, obviously, but still. Those who do right will have a book in between. What is this book in between? Sefer Beinonim. right? Because even amongst the Erev Rav, get this, even amongst the Erev Rav, although the large majority are wicked, there are a few good ones, although they are considered totally wicked. Okay, this is the Ramchal saying this. And there are also of those who have both good and bad. These are the ones who are Benonim, right? The ones in between. Now, when the time comes, the bad shall be removed from them, and all that will be left is good, and only for the sake that they should follow Israel, not even be part of Israel, but rather serve as Israel. This is why it's going to be removed. But for Israel, however, even the lowest of the low are written in the book of life. Meaning, what I just say, even amongst the Erev Rav still can make a choice, right? They can choose to follow Israel, recognize the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and then they will continue to exist in service of Israel, or be gone. Now, in regards to what the Gra wrote, that the Torah scholars are of the aspect of Rachel, of Rachel, while the positive aspects of Am Haaretz are the side of Leah, we can have an even greater understanding through the Ramchal's works from Sefer HaKlalim, the Book of Rules, number 32. He says, there are two roots to Israel. The first of Leah and Rachel, basically. The first of Leah is the root of the entire nation, the bad and the good alike, simply due to the fact that they are Israel. Kabbalistically speaking, this is because their root is connected to the highest heights, and whether they like it or not, they are sustained by the lights thereof. The second, Rachel, is the root of Israel that is directly connected to their deeds. Whatever befalls Israel is based on their deeds. So Leah, who is the root of all of Israel, has a much higher root. However, Rachel is based on our deeds, and therefore the outcome is under her watch. You see? Oh yeah, we're all up here, but what we do down here actually matters what's up here. It's directly affected, right? We are the ones that change the heavens down here. This is by design. That's why God gave us free will. Which is why she is called, Rachel, Akeret Habayit, and Em Habanim, the lady of the house and the mother of the children. Now you understand why we need them both. Yes, you need that connection up and down. Now here's your connection between the upper and the lower worlds, right? Also you have Leah, who is the mother of Yehuda, and you have Rachel as the mother of Joseph. Mashiach ben Yosef, David, you get it. Okay. Now these are the words of the Gra on this matter. Amei haaretz, the lowest of the nation of Israel, although they have no Torah or Mitzvot to their merit, nevertheless, they are still from the root of Israel, as they are called by the name Israel. So says God. But the Torah scholars, obviously, in addition to being of the same root, are connected to a more exclusive club, and that is of the lady of the house, Akeret Habayit, which is Rachel. So as long as Amei Haaretz recognize the Torah scholars and understand and respect their value, granting them the honor and respect that they are due, through this recognition alone, they will cleave to the Torah scholars and become elevated through them. But those who are of Amei Haaretz, the lowest of Israel, who do not recognize the learners and the teachers of Torah, who ridicule them and make their lives miserable, these are called Erev Rav. And this being the parameters according to the Gra, I can unfortunately say there are many of these. In Deuteronomy 33:3, it says, "Indeed you showed love for peoples. All his holy ones are in your hand, for they let themselves be centered at your feet, bearing your utterances." So we're going to break that one down. Okay, the Gra says that these peoples, these amim that God loves, in Hebrew I'll read it, Af chovev amim. Indeed you showed love for peoples. Okay, that's the best translation, I guess. These amim that God loves, even them God loves. And meaning in addition to the Amei Haaretz, the low of the low who don't have Torah or mitzvot. But still, I'm Israel. And if a rabbi comes or if, something, I will show respect. God's people. And even they break down into 4 sects. From Proverbs 3:18. Etz chaim hi lemachazikim ba v'tomchea meushar. It is a tree of life for those who grasp it, and those who draw near it are fortunate. It is a tree of life for those who grasp it. This group grasps it by learning Torah. How do you grasp the tree of life? You learn Torah. Those who draw near to it are fortunate. These are the ones who financially support those who learn Torah. Supporting, right? Machazikim ba, lachzik ba, to hold it up. These are the ones who sit in the Beit HaMikdash, the houses of study, and listen to the Torah being taught, and the remaining Amei Haaretz who fulfill the will of God. You get that? Okay. No? Again? Okay. First one. It is a tree of life for those who grasp it. That's the first part of the verse. This is the group that grasps it, the tree of life, by learning Torah. Second group. Those who draw near it are fortunate. Okay? These are the ones who financially support those who learn Torah. The third group. These are the ones who sit in Beit Midrash, in the houses of study, and listen to the Torah being taught. That's the third group. And the fourth, the remaining Amei Haaretz, who fulfill the will of God. In other words, I am there, I am Israel, and I'll do whatever I need to do, given whatever tools I have. That's them. And this is the meaning of, in Deuteronomy 33:3, all his holy ones are in your hand as they support Torah scholars, for they let themselves be centered at your feet. They assist Torah scholars. Bearing your utterances, they always sit and listen to Torah being taught. You showed love for peoples. These are those who do anything for the sake of God. You see, there's always an opportunity of redemption for Israel, no matter how fallen, no matter how far off, because God gave his word to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so even the wicked ones of Israel, those who do not know what is good or bad. I don't know. Can I eat this? Can I not eat? I don't know. Most Jews today, they know that pork is bad, but why is shrimp bad? Whatever, okay? So these who don't know the difference between good or bad, nor could they tell any difference, are considered to be lost sheep. Do you understand the language? I attribute this not only to this group amongst the Jews, but amongst the Gentiles who have the soul of Israel, which is why whoever needs to, listen to me now, whoever needs to convert before Mashiach comes, absolutely will. And whoever is not part of Israel will not. In fact, some might actually convert before, but then Mashiach will be like, get out. I can smell something rotting. All right? Now that, really for now, that's the bottom line. So we're going to stop here for today. We'll stop here for today. Otherwise, this would have been like a 2.5-hour class. Next week, we have one more class to conclude the book, Acharit Kereshit. Stick around because hopefully you'll get the answer you never thought to ask for. So as always, everyone, thank you so much for joining me. If you have any questions, if you need to speak or something, send me an email, okay? We'll take care of you. So, anyway, thanks everyone. Have a wonderful rest of the week and have a Shabbat Shalom. See you next time. Bye.